And I would now like to call upon the panel on unity and inclusion, which would be moderated by Pakisoti Saravanamuthu. Dr. Saravanamuthu is the founding executive director of the Center for Policy Alternatives and was the secretary of the Consultative Task Force on Reconciliation Mechanisms. He is also a founder of the Sri Lanka chapter of Transparency International, a director of the Regional Office of Amnesty International, and a bureau member of the South Asians for Human Rights. Now, there has been a request for a break in between, but I would just like to ask you to be a little patient, because that way we can actually efficiently complete the proceedings and you will have plenty of time for Q&A. So, may I call upon Dr. Saravanamuthu and the panelists, Ishan Jalil, Selvi Sachidanandam, Arun Siddharth, and Jeremy Lienage.
Good afternoon, everyone. And this panel, as you've just been told, is on ethnicity and inclusion and national unity. Without spending too much of time on giving you an introduction to the subject, all I would say is this, is that in 2009, after the defeat of the LTT on the battlefield, the government of Sri Lanka talked about a political settlement of the ethnic conflict. In 2015, when we had the general election, I think the buzzword, both in the north and in the south, was about accountability. And with regard to the north, accountability was in respect of the allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and we got the reconciliation mechanisms that were suggested by Mangala Samaravira, the Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka, at the Geneva Human Rights Council. Unfortunately, accountability in the rest of the country, which was with regard to, I think, the allegations of the money that had been stolen by the ruling dispensation, came to nothing. And therefore, I think it was one of the prime movers or the prime impetus for the Aragalaya in terms of getting that particular family out of government, but they haven't got out of politics, and certainly the money has not been returned. So the question that I really want to put to the panelists, and I think they will introduce themselves when I ask them the questions, is in terms of, do we really have an ethnic conflict or a national question in Sri Lanka that has to be addressed? Can I ask you first, Jeremy?
I think certainly we have an ethnic conflict. And I think, again, as many of the previous speakers have said, it starts with politicians, their divide and rule tactics. And I think Aragalaya was a great example of exposing the lie of politics, of politicians, that we are not a united polity. Now, you know, we are given a drama on the stage many times. We don't really know what's happening in the background. You know, the Easter bombings, the report from the Easter bombings has raised many, many questions about who was really involved. The war, Aluthgama, Digana, these are all examples of, I believe, the kind of hidden hand behind the politics, so that the politicians can gain what they need. And the victims of all of this are the people of Sri Lanka, whether they're Muslim or Sinhalese or Tamil. These are the victims. So I think we have a real, really big issue, but it can only be resolved, I think, if our politicians are worthy of our vote.
Selvi?
Good morning. Of course, we know that we have a problem, and it's the elephant in the room and nobody looks at it. And this problem has been there since our independence, and I feel personally that this has been the root cause of our collapse today. The current financial collapse is not just a financial collapse, but it's a social collapse, moral collapse, ethical collapse, and cultural collapse. Academia has been claiming that more a section of the society is discriminated and hit, the deeper the country as a whole will descend into lawlessness, indebtedness, militarization, and abject misery. There are so many reasons being given as cause of our predicament today. But I will like to say that the root cause of our problem today is the way in which the successive governments had dealt with the minority communities in this country. So I feel, yes, there is a problem and we need to address it.
Thank you. I am Arun Siddharth from Jaffna. I was born in Jaffna, educated in Jaffna, brought up in Jaffna, and still I am living in Jaffna. First of all, I would like to ask, ladies and gentlemen, please excuse me for my language, because I was not educated in an English medium school in Jaffna. I studied in a small village school named Udivil Mans Kalavan Padasalai. No problem, I can speak, but not if there are any grammatical mistakes, please excuse me. So, I just want to tell you, I never felt that we have a conflict between ethnicities. I see that we don't have an ethnic conflict based on ethnicity. There may be some issues, but ethnically, we don't have conflict with Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims, or Burger Malay. But our politicians create this problem, I see. I noticed that somebody, Mr. Maitri Gunaratna said, 1956 Sinhala Only Act is the root cause of the conflict. Maybe you mentioned that. But I know when 1944, G.G. Ponnambalam, we had a politician, an elite politician from Colombo, created a party named All Ceylon Tamil Congress based on ethnicity before independence. Tamil leaders made this political party. Then in 1949, S.J.V. Selvanayagam separated from the All Ceylon Tamil Congress and he made Ilangai Tamil Arasu Katchi. So these parties are based on ethnicity, not based on unity. So we always gone through, or we have been through, there are some elite politicians from Colombo. Even somebody, they can't even speak in Tamil. They even don't live in Colombo, in Jaffna. But they represented us. Always they said that we have problem with Sinhalese and they are what you call, they are marginalizing and they don't give our rights. Because of that, we are suffering. But in my village, my grandparents are toddy tappers, both are. I have been through terrible caste-based discrimination in Jaffna. You know, we had a 30 years war. Maybe you can tell that 40 or 50 years we had this problem. But caste-based discrimination in Jaffna, in northeastern region, we had it more than 700 years. You know that? They made the current political issue is 13th Amendment. They are asking land and police powers, but they denied our land rights through Desavala law. Maybe I know doctor know that. In 16th century, they took the help from Dutch people and they made this law, Desavala law, even though today I can't buy a land in Jaffna town. And for police, we are fighting for an independent police, not politicized police. So, and also about the conflict, we have some members from Jaffna, women members, more than 30 members are here from Women Front, Jaffna Women Front. There are so many ladies are here who lost their parents, abducted by LTT and other Tamil militant groups. My wife, she lost her father when she was 5 years old. He never did a mistake. He was not a member of militant group, but he was abducted by LTT and he is disappeared. There are so many families whose parents, brothers, sisters, fathers, abducted by Tamil militant groups, but nobody talk about that. We don't have a voice. Personally, I am denied in Jaffna Press Club. Some allied politicians from north, from south, Tamil politicians banned me in the press club because I am talking this truth. So I just want to tell you that please, let us start to speak the truth. Everybody hide the truth. That's the problem we see. If we start to speak the truth, we can find a solution. That is our recommendation for this conflict. Thank you, Doctor.
A very good afternoon to all of you. So, first and foremost, thank you, Dr. Sara, for that very important question when you set the stage for the panel discussion. And since I have no way of timing myself, because I can't be pressing the button in my watch and checking time, Dr. Sara and Visakha, please discipline me if I'm going overboard or if I'm going ahead of time. So yes, as per your question about whether there is a conflict, whether there is a problem, I would, first and foremost, I would agree with many points raised by all the previous speakers, to which I have some additions. What I would say is, yes, there is a conflict, yes, there is a problem, but it's not just ethnic. It's social, it's political, it's economic. Why? Since independence, right? Since 1948, we have been left alone by the foreigners to fend for ourselves. Have we done it? Looks like we haven't. Reason, we have not created the space for people to develop and to contribute as productively as they can. Now say, in 1971, I'll talk about, because this topic is also about inclusion, not just unity, right? 1971, there was an insurrection. 1988-89, there was another insurrection. And 1983, the Black July riots happened. All these things, based on ethnicity, race, and Arun was talking about the caste issue, which is actually a very, very deep issue in this country, right? So these issues do exist. Where have we gone wrong? Main thing, our political leaders and powers that be, who are supposed to take the decisions, has not done adequate consulting. People need to be consulted. If our society is to move forward as one Sri Lankan nation, everyone, because I was very carefully listening to our eminent speakers who spoke earlier, Mr. Maitri Gunaratna and Mr. Murtaza, all of them, they had very valuable points which were raised. So my point here is, we are bankrupt right now. We need to think of a way to move forward. And the best way to do that is for all groups, all social groups, that is, regardless of gender, ethnicity, race, caste, sexual orientation, disability, class, whatever. All these are man-made barriers, right? I might sound very cliche and very, general, but these things have to be said. All these groups must be given a proper platform to raise their voices and for them to be adequately represented. Now in Parliament, I'll ask you, I am a person with a disability. I'm blind since birth. Do you know that in Parliament, in Sri Lanka's history, we have had very, very few disabled MPs. In the previous Parliament, there was a lady, Shantini. She was a single amputee from the TNA. And in this Parliament, there's Ajit Manaperuma from Samaki Jana Balavegya, who's also, even though he doesn't speak about disability rights per se, himself is a person with a disability. So what has happened is, decision making has been given to a certain set of people.
Ishan, just one more minute.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Zara. Certain set of people, and we as a society are just waiting for them to take decisions. We are not getting proactively involved. We are just reactive, as Mr. Omar very correctly said in his presentation. So we need to be proactive citizens, and we need to make sure that there are inclusive spaces for people to not just take decisions, but also to implement them on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishan. I think we've heard the sort of diversity of views reinforcing the point about unity in diversity with regard to Sri Lanka. My second question is to the panelists, is the question of, look, the Aragalaya was supposed to initiate and announce a new kind of politics in this country. And to those of you who feel that there is a question of unity, of reconciliation, what has the Aragalaya facilitated in terms of taking meaningful steps to go forward? And what are those meaningful steps with regard to reconciliation and unity post-Aragalaya?
Aragalaya. That was, I think, a great inspiration for people, a great acknowledgement that people power can win. So those months when I went along to it and saw the amazing unity, the amazing celebration, the peaceful and the powerful resistance of corruption, it was truly inspiring. But there are always other forces at play, and the militarization of so many countries now, whether it's Australia, whether it's Sri Lanka, has shown us what it can do to people power, how we can be controlled, how we can be put under surveillance so that they know everything we do. And I think one of the things that hasn't been discussed today has been the whole thing of social media. Now, even with the Digana conflict, it was really spread by Facebook algorithms. And so we have many, many forces at play, and many times we don't know what those forces are. So I think Aragalia gave us a canvas, a blank canvas that we could paint on. But I think going forward, it's not going to be as easy, and I think we might have to pay with our blood, pay with suffering if we really want that level of freedom. So to me, it is about what is the price that we are willing to pay for our freedom and our unity.
Aragalaya was a very inspiring phenomena in our country in the recent times. And they actually gave us the beginnings, or shall we, the seeds of how we should go about it. And they said if we are to arise from these ashes of the end of the war, the financial collapse, and all the other collapses that followed in train, we need to actually tackle the root cause, which is to spread amity between the communities. And they made this point over and over again by creating an atmosphere where all the communities were brought together and where all the communities were made to feel Sri Lankan. I think this message came very, very loud and clear. We need to create that space where all communities are considered equal in the eyes of the state. See, the main issue here is the state that needs to look at everyone, all communities, as equal. And for that, Aragalaya has actually shown the way. And we need to actually follow up from that.
Okay. So I had few chances to attend some workshops regarding peace building and reconciliations. Usually in Jaffna they don't invite us, but some South-based NGOs invited us, and the theme is peace building, and everybody said that peace building is discussions and dialogues. So, okay, peace building is discussions and dialogues. We have nearly 50 participants here from Jaffna. Nobody can speak Sinhala. Only 1 or 2 can speak Sinhala. Don't you all feel that we have a communication problem between us? So do you think that we have an ethnic conflict or we have a language conflict? I met 2 Sri Lankans day before yesterday in Jaffna. Both are from Deutschland, Germany. They speak in Dutch. One is Sinhalese and one is Tamil. Both are speaking Dutch because Tamil person doesn't know Sinhala, Sinhala person doesn't know Tamil. They have a link language that is Dutch. They know German language when they went to German and they studied German language, and now they are friends. One is hardcore LTD sympathizer, one is from south, from Mathur or somewhere else. But they both are now very close friends. So the actual problem we face is we cannot connect to south because we don't have a language to speak to you all. This is the basic problem I see. Thank you.
So yes, Dr. Sara, to your question about Aragalaya and what we can learn from it regarding reconciliation and also inclusion, if I may put it that way. Aragalaya was, it started on 9th of April and, it went on until around July, right? So there were several, religious and cultural events that were happening during that time. On April 14th, that's Sinhala and Tamil New Year, I went to Aragalaya. I participated at the Aragalaya, right? There were so many people, not just the Sinhalese and the Tamils, but Muslims, Burghers, Malays, and persons with disabilities. All of these people, they came and they celebrated Aurudu. So what does it say? Right? Sri Lankans, this is actually, from April to July last year, our tourism was at its, it was at a very, very low point. But then, something good about that time. It showed the good side of Sri Lanka. It showed that in times of crisis, in times of peril, we can come together as a nation. Right? So what we need to do, if we are to move forward even an inch as a country, is to learn lessons from that Aragalaya. Because that Aragalaya also, because of certain political parties hijacking it and all of that, it just ended up being a big mess, right? But then there were so many things that we can be inspired about. So yes, it was a very good, it was a very good turning point in Sri Lanka's history for us as a nation, as its citizens, to reconcile with each other, right? So yes, my answer is we have so many things to learn, and now that we are anyway still not out of the crisis, it's time, the time has come again for us to get together as one nation, maybe not to do Aragalaya and maybe not to get involved in violent clashes, but to find solutions to the country, to the problems that we are facing right now as a country. Thank you.
Well, can I just pick up on what you said, Ishan, in terms of solutions, and to ask very quickly from the panel, if you were in a position to make decisions and implement policy with regard to strengthening national unity and inclusion and reconciliation, can you just name for me 2 things that you think can be done and should be done in the current context? Ishan, will you start?
Yes. So what I would say is, first and foremost, there's a, right now there's a discussion about the 13th Amendment. Instead of abolishing it or, just saying no to it, and also considering what, considering very good points which were raised by Arun about, the whole caste system and all of that, I think we need to take all those points into consideration and to see and also to implement the 13th Amendment, which is anyway a part of the Constitution. We are a part of, it is a part of the Constitution. So I think, but then it should be implemented upon consultation with all people from all communities, regardless of race, caste, creed, whatever. That's number one. Fundamentally and attitudinally, what needs to be done as a solution? As a country, first and foremost, we need to say sorry to each other. Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims, Burghers, Malays, everyone, disabled, non-disabled, people from the LGBT community, everyone needs to say that we are sorry that we are in this peril. Because if we are to move forward, we need to accept that it's not just the politicians, but we also have made mistakes. So we need to say sorry. And then from there, we can even think about starting to move forward. Those are my two, proposals.
Thank you.
Yes, again, I just like to mention a quote from Nelson Mandela. He once said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. If you talk to a man in his mother tongue, it goes to his heart. So until we find a language, a common language, or a solution for the communication gap, we cannot find reconciliation. And second thing about the 13th Amendment, yes, it was on the Constitution. But this is Social Disability Act enacted in 1957. 66 years, this was not applied in Northeast areas. You know that? Anybody knows that? This act is against for the caste-based discrimination. But we are every day facing discrimination from these elites. That, like George Orwell said, every animals are equals, but some are more equal than others. So that more equal than others, that animals discriminating us from 700 years old. If you don't want armed conflict again, you have to resolve this first. If not, this will create another conflict very soon, because we don't want power sharing based on ethnicity. We need a power sharing based on Sri Lankan. If Arun Siddharth have a right, Roshan and somebody from Mondaragala or somebody from some Muslim youth from Ampara, it doesn't matter. Share the power for Sri Lankans, not because Arun needs some powers and Roshan needs some powers and Mohammed needs some powers. It will create more problem. I know that when I was 9 years old in Jaffna, I was in my grandmother's, I brought up by my grandmother. I saw some flights coming top of our home. I saw Indian aircrafts came in 1986, I think June 4th or something. The Operation Eagle Mission 4. They dropped paripu, dal, or rice and all these stuffs, and they dropped notices also. So I ran and took a notice, and they said, we want to help Tamils, Sri Lankan Tamils. So that's what we came, they said. But Indian IPKF did so many war crimes. One of my uncles shot dead in Jaffna University in 87, October 21st. But we never had justice for that. Nobody talk about that. No Geneva, no UN representatives are still today. Why you all are not talking about those crimes? Crime is crime. Who did it? It doesn't matter. If you want to talk about crimes, talk about all the crimes. IPKF crimes, India LTD crime, other militant groups crimes, everything. If not, forget it and let us be united as a nation and come forward, and we would like to, we can help this country to rebuild again, because in northern part we have so many resources. But
Arun,
we
can
never...
you bring it to a close, please?
Yes, but we never attributed or we never helped to this country's economic, these things. So we would like to get to close with South, and we would like to rebuild the country again. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask you, Arun, you mentioned the whole question of communication. What do you think can be done or should be done with regard to, addressing that question of communication?
Yes, there are so many...
common language.
Yes, there are so many Tamils migrating from Jaffna to European countries. Before they migrate, they study that country's language. They will pass German A1 examination in German embassy, and French, everything else. Wherever they go, they study that country's language. But they don't study singular language. I don't know why. But I know that there is a policy in South and North. But one thing, My friends are, single friends, children can write and read Sinhala, but they cannot speak because they don't have, they didn't have a chance to communicate with Tamils. But in our areas, I have 3 kids, three sons, 3 schools, we don't have Sinhala teachers. Purposely, I don't know the administrative people who are in Jaffna areas, they don't appoint Sinhala teachers, so we can't study Sinhala. This is the problem. So please, I went once Malaysia. You have to study Malay and your English compulsory. If you are not passed, you can't go further. So they compulsory is Malay and English compulsory, and if you wish, you can study your mother tongue. This is their policy. So I see you can do something similar to that.
Thank you. Selvi?
There was a comment made by Dr. Tara Dimel about centralization and how it was affecting the education system in Sri Lanka. And of course, her solution was to, implement the 13th Amendment and give more powers to the region. The same thing applies for the ethnic question also. We have enacted laws, but we don't implement them. And if at least as a low-hanging fruit, immediately, what we need to do is to share power with the regions, not just the north and east, but all the regions and all the provinces, so that not just education, but also amity among communities, health, and all the other essential services are taken care of by the empowered regions. We need to have inclusive politics, inclusive government, everything needs to be inclusive. Whereas what we have experienced so far in the last 70 years is exclusiveness, excluding one person or the other, excluding one region or the other, excluding one district or another. And this has been our curse, I think. We need to practice inclusiveness, and inclusiveness is the wisdom of this hour. And we have come to a certain stage now where we cannot proceed forward without the wisdom of inclusiveness. I appeal to everybody to take this, particularly the people in the government. We need to have this as a kind of a bottom line on all of the acts, all of the memorandum, all of the reports, that we practice inclusiveness. Thank you.
I grew up in Kandy. I was 9 when I left Sri Lanka to go to Australia. And we left basically because of the language policy. Now my father is Sinhalese, and he knew English, Sinhalese, Tamil, Latin, and Portuguese. He had a wide array of friends across all the communities, and he used to have very big parties. They used to all come. And that spirit was embedded in me. So, when I look at you, I don't see you as Sinhalese or Tamil. So I think we need to move beyond just this continuous labeling. I think the other thing is reconciliation. We think of reconciliation as this nice thing, sweetness and light. We come together and we can enjoy being with each other. I don't see reconciliation like that at all. I think it is a very dark path. It is a very hard and dark road. What we generally engage in Sri Lanka is superficial reconciliation, where we bring together arbitrarily a group of religious leaders from different religious backgrounds, or we get a bus to take some people from the north to the south without seeing it as part of a bigger strategy. And how can we create the space for, I call it a sacred space, for dissonance, for disagreement? Because if a Tamil person has lost his wife and kids in the war, or a Sri Lankan mother has lost her son in a battle, this is not easy to say, that's okay, get over it, we can be together. There is pain, and we need to create that sacred space for the pain to emerge. And if we can sit with that pain long enough, then some miracle happens. And we go to a deeper level of connection that many times is beyond words. And I think the challenge for us is, in our lives, whether it's individual, family, NGOs, civil society, or government, to create that sacred space so that we can actually hear and listen very deeply to the pain of the other without arguing, without coming in and disrupting that kind of sacred space. So I think it's a challenge at every level of our society.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm not going to try to summarize, but I just would like to point out a couple of things. First of all, of course, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the Republic of Sri Lanka is for the entire country. It's not for a particular section of it. It is for the entire country. The other point is with regard to, someone mentioned truth and all of that, the last two governments that we've had have flirted, and I use that word very deliberately, flirted with the idea of setting up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission, somewhat based on the South African notion of people coming forward and telling the truth of what happened. And I think the governments that have come forward with this idea have hoped that they could grant amnesty to those who come and do that. But that's not the point about the South African model either. There were cases where, yes, if full disclosure is made, then you are amnestied. But otherwise, people have the right to take perpetrators to court. There are a number of things, again, that we have not mentioned in terms of, Jeremy, you talked about space for dissent and for criticism of governments. I mean, we know that, certainly I know personally, that in the last so many years, we've had this whole question of impending non-governmental organization legislation that is going to be brought, which will going to cover all organizations, that they have been visited by TID, by CID, Criminal Investigations Department, Terrorist Investigations Department. So they are harassed, they are encouraged, therefore, to engage in self-censorship. Yeah? So there are a whole variety of experiences, I think, with regard to the whole issue of reconciliation and national unity, which we haven't had time to cover, but I think I can tease out from some of the things that people have talked about truth, about the whole question of caste, about reconciliation in terms of the dark side of reconciliation as well, which I will bring out.
We really need to wrap up now, as interesting as it is.
In the moderator's discussion. So thank you, everyone. In particular, thank you to the panelists.